To record? Yeah.
Got it.
Welcome to the late show. Wake up and think clearly. Sorry, I'm
Late
late.
morning. Isn't there a show that's called Late Night with XYZ? Now it's
night.
late morning with
Late
Hido.
morning with Luis del Pino, Rami,
And all kinds of crazy people.
PM, and Gyro Jam Yang Pao in beautiful Lake Mary. To wake up and think clearly, where we wake up late sometimes and have a hard time thinking clearly. Think druggy.
Do you have a very tiny subject of consideration due to the time restraints? Let's talk about something easy, like love. Universal compassion. Just
Universal
do it.
Compassion.
Yeah, just do it.
Why didn't I think
See you
of that?
later.
How is it possible to not think about universal compassion and become automatically compassionate by only thinking about selfishly how to become a Buddha, and then when you become a Buddha, you suddenly become compassionate?
Let's simplify the question. Can we not think? It's a good question.
Can we not think?
Can we not think? Can we not think?
Can we not think?
Right.
Think how?
Can we stop thinking?
Can we stop thinking?
Right.
No.
Oh.
Ah.
So we are slaves to our own thoughts. We're a machine that cannot stop itself. Don't get me going.
Think.
It's very very a la mode.
When we're in deep sleep, are we not?
We don't flatline in our brain, that's for sure. Something is going on there. Just like the zero Kelvin, it's never zero. There's something going on there. So the mind, even when it's in deep sleep, is not flatline. You know, look at an electroencephalogram, and you will see that even when we are completely out, we don't know nothing. The brain didn't stop. We didn't flatline.
But what about feeling? Is feeling a kind of thinking?
I would say so.
Then when we're not thinking and we in deep sleep, and then we open our eyes, when we open our eyes, we receive sense impressions, and while we're receiving them, is there a moment, the moment that we start receiving sensations, is that considered thinking, or is that just input?
Are we not receiving?
And then when we discern what we're thinking, that's when we start thinking. When we discern what we're seeing, That's the moment we start thinking.
I would say that the line of the EEG, when we are in deep sleep, we're not discerning what we are sensing because we are sensing. When we're deep sleep, we are sensing still. So
Yeah.
those little, those little blips in the line are the sensing. And then when we wake up, we discern, and there the line becomes spiky. Boop, 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 boop. So there you go. So consciousness is a function between zero, but not zero because we're never flatline. As long as this brain is functioning, and these senses are sensing, and then eventually this brain processes, discerns those sensing sensations that are sensed. Then so that's why I describe consciousness as a function from zero to depending on the frequency or the vibrations on the EEG. And so this is a good question. Even in deep sleep, we don't flatline. So the mind cannot stop sensing or discerning, depending on how awake it is, as long as it is put together. And put together, I mean that there's a brain with a body in an environment conducive to those things being together. Because if you take a brain or a body out of the planet and you put it in space, it's gonna die. It's just gonna, and then that consciousness will flatline. And we're done for today. It's 8:01. It was great. It was great spending time with you guys, asking questions and answering questions.
And you had to go. You gotta go.
And I gotta go.
Oh,
I gotta go.
it was a
So
great 10-minute chat with Luis
this
del
was a
Pino.
good demonstration that consciousness is a function that is described or represented, that represents consciousness. And it's a function between zero and infinity. And I'm going to stick with my story and wish you all a wonderful weekend. See you next Saturday. If you don't fall,
Luis's story.
see you next Saturday if you don't fall asleep, Heido. Later. I'm going to push a mower. See you later.
See you. There. Wait. Mm. I'm sending messages. Oh. Oh. Yeah. Oh. Oh shoot. I'm gonna leave. Welcome to the late early morning show. It's supposed to be at 7, but I overslept. Well, I didn't have my alarm set up. Uh, I have 2 phones and I had it in my pocket. I slept in my mother's room and my phone wasn't there. And then I felt, it's a quiet morning. How come nothing's happening? And then I looked, oh my gosh, it's 7:45. Welcome, Dominic.
Morning, Jeff.
How are you?
I'm okay. Oh, I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well. And Rami, he must have gone to get something, to do something, but he'll be back. And it's recording. I get Rami is recording it. And Luis was here earlier, but he had to go. He leaves it around 8. But we talked about for 10 minutes about, is it possible to not think? And
You better ask how to think.
Because I asked, is it possible to not think about compassion and become compassionate by becoming a Buddha or an Arhat? by means of wisdom, by means of thinking only about the nature of reality, or emptiness. Everything is empty of inherent existence. So if we know the nature of reality, then automatically we become compassionate. So is maybe one way of saying it. So we don't have to think about others, just think about reality. And then when we know what reality is like, then boom, our compassion becomes infinite, universal compassion. Then we love everyone without exception, even the mosquito.
Is that mostly a thinking process or a feeling process? So, because you said earlier, can go without thinking. I heard that part. And then I heard you talk about, you brought in what to think, how to think. You know, usually thinking is a process done for commerce and for a lot of things. But then again, what about the feeling part? Because you brought in the word compassion. Is that a thinking, or is it a bit of thinking and including now feelings? There's a lot of people that really, well, I can't say a lot of people, but a lot of times when people say things such as how they think about something, they're not really sharing how they feel, or they're guarding how they feel. So they put in the forefront their thinking process. So when you're talking about compassion or desire, is that a feeling, or is that a thinking, or a bit of both? Something to ponder. If, you know, I always ponder those things. So it's like reason. I can even throw in reason if I really want to get into it, but you did say the word thinking. So can we think our way through or towards compassion? Or is there something missing? Or is that limiting? Because one thing is, can we not think? That's usually the feeling talking, you know, from the ponder. That's a little bit of a psychology in there, intuitive psychology, actually. You know, imagine if we had to all learn how to read with Braille. With Braille comes touching, and that would be feeling. Again, I'm playing this game with myself because I know all of that still comes to source, and we play this, you know, all these different, you know, constructs, feelings, thinking, reasoning, sensing. It's kind of like saying I'm an introvert or extrovert, or positive and negative. So, but anyway, you brought up the word thinking. So what do you, I'm not even going to use the word, what do you think about asking that question? I want to engage with you, Jay. I want to engage with the conversation opposed to using some abstract conversation. Even though this is it.
Wow. So it sounds like there's thinking and feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the difference? How do I know when I'm thinking and when I'm feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm in deep sleep and there's something going on the EEG or MRI or whatever measurement we put on the brain,
Mm-hmm.
or the body, could be.
You're getting there. You're getting there. The hemispheres.
Something going on there, and then we're dreaming there's something more going on. And so is it composed of thinking or feeling or both, or are they the same?
They could be, but you're saying the word thinking, so converge on that. I just put the word feeling because thinking is usually a one hemisphere process more times than not. You do cross over. You know, you said the brain, so instead of, because if you didn't bring in the word compassion, then we can just solely go with the thinking process. But since you brought it up, analyze it. Use the thinking to question thinking. So why do I always say the word thinking? And then people say, you know, like silencing of the mind. Well, good luck silencing the mind, but you can silence the brain. But even that, if one's always leading the other, meaning that a person says, but I'm thinking, I said, but that's not what's leading. What's leading is your feelings that's needing somebody to overshadow itself, to hide itself, to feel safe with itself, opposed to questioning the self. So now when you do the hand gesture, one thinking and one feeling, really stop and look at what hand is leading. Because if you're saying I'm thinking, that's your left hemisphere with your right hand. If you go with your left hand, now some people confuse themselves and then they'll lead with their left hand. I said, so that's showing who you're leading. The body's always communicating with the brain and also with other organs in your body. It's always communicating. So when you say words, it's a great opportunity. You don't even have to say the words. You just have to have, you can actually capture it in thoughts. So I'm just about to have the word thinking or feeling. Why do I feel guarded? What is he saying? What he's saying is distracting me, or I'm choosing to be distracted. So what is thinking? You don't have to share with me, but if you want to, that's fine. But more times than not, that process can be done from within. I'm just using the word today, process. You know, we always are. We're like a data machine. Think about you work on your computer and you're trying to do some sort of directories within subdirectories in a computer. That's a thinking process. But how do you feel when you fix it or it smoothly runs? That now it finally pokes its head because it feels safe. Now I can actually lead with a positive. But would you be able to share leading? I'm just going to use the word leading and following because that's the same individual doing that. Could you lead if it was something negative? That's the feminine side. That's usually the other hemisphere. This is duality. Again, I'm playing this game of let's split ourselves. And then some people like to split even more. Let's go into quads. Let's make it into a triangle. I've gone on a little bit too much there, but I know you're a little snake there, Jay. You like to, it benefits you more than it does me, because for me, I don't really need to share verbally, but I do. I'm kind of a little bit of diarrhea of the mouth sometimes.
Well, perhaps there is no difference between thinking and feeling in the foundation. Then somewhere along the process, there's thinking when we decide to convert what we're feeling into a sentence and we spit it out through our throat. I think, or I feel this. But what if the foundation of all thinking is a feeling? And then when we decide to express it verbally, then it becomes a thinking.
You said foundation. Feelings might lead your thinking capacity, but usually the foundation of thinking, feeling, and reason is usually the emotions. The emotion. That's the action part. That's the masculine part. In emotion. Then you have the mind, which encompasses it. This is the struggle between the mind and the emotion, because one has somewhat developed or ready to develop, and the other one thinks it's developed. So the emotion thinks and feels and senses or reasons it's developing, but they're not turn inwards and start questioning reason. It's like having a, let's say you're in a situation, you have a master over you. Would you feel confident enough, or is it in the program that you can turn towards the master and question him or it? If not, then it's a one-way street. And then you're always going to be led by the blind, meaning that he's counting on you to be blind. Your naivety is his bliss or her bliss. So if you turn inwards, you should be able to question it without any sort of reward or consequence to it. So now the emotion should be able to be questioned. Now, how does one do that? Use the same program that actually it's been given to you. But we've never been, as a collective or as a groups, never been taught that. Then we follow things such as dogmas, because we're not taught, well, why don't I question all the dogmas and all its subdirectories? Think about state and religion, all the different subdirectories it has. But then we'll spend the same amount of energy to justify our decision. I'm this, I'm that. When we're not like that. You know, again, that's something a person has to re-examine or examine themselves, you know, and say to himself, so what is my story? Well, how did I perceive myself as a child? How did I perceive myself during this era? You know, but then most, if they really are honest with themselves, would realize I've been reacting the whole time. Reacting, acting. What's acting? Action. What's action? It's actually emotion. I'm always in the express mode, opposed to really stopping long enough and say, well, how do I feel? How do I think? What am I sensing? But hey, dare not this become a big book, and then enough people are buying it because they value commerce than they actually, or the ideal that I know how to read, then actually taking the contents of the information, go inwards and actually say, okay, I'll put it into my program and I'll see whether or not it actually has loopholes in it. It's an inquiry that you gave, thinking. You know, and then there's other people going the opposite way. They'll say, this is how I feel, but then they won't use thinking because they're trying to articulate it, but yet they're doing the opposite. They're leading openly with their emotion and suppressing their thinking capacity. You know, we do a lot of things for granted, Jay. Like I take it for granted that I breathe, I move my hand gestures, how my eyes twitch up, you know, how it blinks. I take a lot of that for granted.
So so we had thinking and feeling, but then now there's emotion. Where did that come from? What is that?
You said the word foundation. The emotion usually is the foundation of those things. So if you can envision a bunch of strings, call one string thinking, feeling, sensing, and then you have the puppet, which is the emotion. The most we'll ever get is once you realize how those things are and what's actually it's being held up by. Sorry, not held up by, what is holding the puppet. Then most of us might see the puppet master. Really, it's just the hand you'll see of the puppet master. You never actually see who is the puppeteer. So you see the puppet master. So when you're doing these different strings, thinking, feeling, and senses, you have to bring them all in the same room before you realize, but who is the one that's been pulling all that? Or what have we been pulling in that particular case? So
Dominic is saying that we were talking and I was saying there's feeling, no, there's thinking, and then there's feeling. And then Dominic mentioned emotion because I said something about foundation, and it sounds like could emotion be the foundation of thinking and feeling, and we didn't know it? What is emotion? Putting E into motion. What is the E that is being put into motion?
energy.
Energy being put into motion. So perhaps emotion comes from the body as energy, willing itself into the brain, and the brain verbalizes it through thinking, verbal thinking, to express it to others in the Wake Up and Think Clearly show, the late morning. But then feeling. What is feeling? That song, feelings. Trying to forget my feelings. So feeling. What is feeling versus what is emotion? Let's analyze.
Emotions usually are underdeveloped for most people. That's why when somebody leads with the ideal of how do you think, when it shows that clearly that's a feeling or a reasoning moment. So again, it tells a person what they're leading with, and usually when you follow whoever whoever's leading, follow up behind the scene, who's actually doing it. It's usually most people emotion, not emotion, yeah, emotion too, because it's underdeveloped. The feelings is usually not feeling safe enough, so they try to go into this analytical left hemisphere over analytical thing. And then other people do the opposite. They break down, they give each other hugs, they cry, but then, you know, again, that they're just bypassing the verbal communication and they're just going with the physical. We fully never engage all the mind and the emotion together. And when I say the mind, I'm not talking about the brain. The brain is just where the two hemisphere, king and queen, are. But
What would you classify anger? Is that a feeling or an emotion?
emotion.
When does a feeling become emotion, or when does an emotion become a feeling? Or which one is more primitive?
You're in a primitive body. So if you express it with the primitive body, then it kind of says it. Unless you want to start trying to
There's
gauge
only,
it.
what if there's only 3 kinds of feelings that generates all emotions? The things we don't, or something that we don't like, or what is it? Aversion. Anything that causes aversion, or maybe it's not caused by it, but we caused it. Yeah. And then the opposite would be, what's the opposite of aversion?
Attachments.
And then with that in the middle, what is that? Being neutral about it.
You can be the observer. You can be the observer of both of those.
Being ignoring it.
That's aversion.
And that's still aversion. Like if we're presented something to eat, we don't like it or hate it, but we're neutral. Is that also a feeling?
In that moment, Jay, if you're the observer, you'll catch yourself. Where did I get the condition of likes and dislikes? The observer is always observing the 2 attachments and resistant parts. Again, that's the emotion being underdeveloped, and it's actually always hiding. And for most people, they'll reach the age of 80 and they'll never attain that. I'm just sharing out loud because whether
Gabe. Welcome, Gabe K.
Hey, everybody.
Did
Morning.
you join earlier? I was asleep. I overslept. For shame.
Hey, at least nothing was going on that was concerning.
And Rami went to get some coffee or something. But he's recording.
So what's the topic today?
So I was thinking, and earlier this morning when there was only Luis and I was thinking, is it possible to not think about compassion and then suddenly let it happen by becoming a Buddha selfishly, like in the sense that I don't care about others except myself, and I'm going to free myself and perfect my mind using meditation maybe, and eliminate all afflictive emotion, and maybe just think about, instead of compassion, is think about wisdom, the nature of reality, and poof, we know reality as it is, and then at that moment we become compassionate. Now I love everyone. Or should we work on our compassion while we're trying to understand the nature of reality? Well, that's kind of a Buddhist way of looking.
What you're describing sounds to me like the selfish gene concept.
The selfish gene concept.
Yeah, Richard Dawkins, the biologist, wrote a book called The Selfish Gene. The concept is, the theory holds that, and there is no such thing as like altruism. Anything you're doing, socially, communally, or for others is really for yourself. It's like embedded into your genes and instincts, because by helping others, you're essentially helping yourself. So you're never really, even when you think you're helping others, you're really only helping yourself. And that's what's driving your motivation.
Mm.
That's a dangerous path there. Okay. What do you think about that? Do you believe that we're all selfish when we try to be nice?
Biologically, I think it holds water. Yeah. Can we rise above our own biology? I think so.
Okay. So how do you rise above your own biology?
Well, I mean this is probably this is where we get back to our where do you look for answers? You know, right? If we looked to
Mhm.
science, they would say you can never escape your own biology.